Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. My bio parents think they're entitled to me and my life just because they happen to give birth to me. I just don't understand how, after all the things they put me through, they can still think this. My bio parents were teen parents. Mom was 16 and dad was 17 at the time. They were messing around, being stupid as hell, and there I was. I don't know what they were thinking when they decided to keep me, but well, that's my life. My bio mom's parents kicked her out as soon as she found out she was pregnant. So she temporarily moved in with my bio dad. Then began a series of moving around, couch surfing, moving from one shitty neighborhood to the other, and almost being homeless several times in my life. Not to mention that my bio parents aren't exactly the best parents on earth. There was a lot of fighting at home. They used to often lock me in and leave because they couldn't afford a babysitter. You get the idea. Things got to a point where CPS stepped in and I was put in a foster home when I was 6. It was pretty rough for the initial years, but I finally found a home with my real parents when I was 10. I moved into their foster home when I was 10 and they adopted me just before my 11th birthday. They're undoubtedly the best thing that's ever happened to me. My mom and dad are wonderful and I have 2 siblings. It was after living with them that I finally saw what a loving home was. I'm 25 now and barely have any contact with my bio parents. I still live in the same city as them, and sometimes they call me up to help them out with rent and stuff. I don't mind doing that, as long as it's only occasional financial help and nothing more. It's fine for me. Ever since I went to college and got a decent job, they've been trying to get into my good books. My real parents have always told me that it's completely up to me what type of relationship I want to have with my bio mom and dad. And I've decided to maintain a distance as much as possible. So now that you guys have an idea of how my life has been, let me tell you about what actually happened. My boyfriend of 3 years proposed to me last year and we set a date. I decided from the beginning that I didn't want my bio parents at the wedding. My dad was going to walk me down the aisle, and there would be only one mother of the bride, and that would be my beautiful mom, not my bio mom. Everything was great, and after lots of planning, it was finally the day of the wedding. Everything was perfect, and the ceremony was just about to start when my worst nightmare came true. I was about to step out of the dressing room to walk down the aisle with Dad when the door opened and in walked my bio parents arm in arm. I was just instantly filled with dread. They weren't supposed to find out about the wedding. My bio mom told me that she was heartbroken at not being invited to my wedding and that I deeply hurt both her and her husband. She told me that despite this, they would forget this ever happened since they'll get to walk me down the aisle. I was silent till that point, but after that, I had to speak up. I told both of them that I only have one real dad who is going to walk me down the aisle, and that's certainly not my bio dad. My bio mom started an argument right there, and everyone in the room was looking massively uncomfortable. I tried to reason with her, saying that everything has already been decided and not to create a scene, but she just wouldn't listen. I think she was a little drunk. I don't even know how they found out about the wedding in the first place. Things got to a point where I was just straight up bawling about everything. I try not to show my emotions in front of my bio parents because I don't want them to manipulate me or blackmail me emotionally, but I just couldn't help it. My lovely mom kept telling me it was okay if both my bio dad and my dad walked me down the aisle just to calm me down, but I didn't want that. As you can imagine, things got pretty bad. Someone decided to get my fiancé so he could help me. The moment he walked in and saw me crying, he absolutely lost it. He walked directly over to me and asked me to explain what they had done, but I couldn't even speak because I was crying so much. My mom explained everything to him and I could feel his temper rising. He lost it and had a huge outburst. Everything he knows about my childhood and all that my bio parents have put me through just channeled into an uncontrollable rage. When I tell you he did not hold back, I mean it. At the end of his speech, my bio mom was fuming with anger but completely speechless. She took one last look at me, told me that I'll regret this, and left. We had to delay the wedding for a bit while I calmed down and got my makeup fixed. Lots of people have been asking me why I used to help my bio parents financially if they've treated me terribly all my life. I don't know how to explain it, guys, but I just couldn't deny them. My bio mom in particular used to always be emotionally manipulative when it came to money. To avoid drama, and also because I felt this weird feeling of guilt because I was so much better off than them, I just gave them money sometimes. After the wedding disaster, though, I regret everything. Also, my bio parents had access to me because they had visitation rights while I was a minor and used to visit me sometimes even after I was adopted. They found out about my job when they showed up at my parents' house one day during the holidays thinking I'd be there. I wasn't there because I had to work, and my mom told them that. She didn't want to tell them where I was working, but they kept pushing, so she had to give in. My bio parents showed up at my house. I'm so done with this whole thing. So I am planning to leave for my honeymoon to Europe tomorrow, and my husband and I were just going over our itinerary when there was a knock at the door and I went up to get it. We weren't expecting anyone, so imagine my shock when I opened the door and saw my bio dad standing there. I immediately took a few steps back and asked him what he was doing there. It was clear that he was drunk from the way he was slurring and barely holding himself up. He told me that he couldn't believe I let another man walk me down the aisle while he was still alive. He also said stuff like I was taken away from them just because they were poor and that I only liked my parents because they had money. This is not true. The reason I was put in foster care was that they were incredibly neglectful and had no idea how to raise a child. I told him as such and said that I'll never recover from the damage he had done to me. That made him angry, and he loudly started saying that I don't deserve to say that because I'm the reason why he had to give up his dreams. At that point, he was loud enough for my husband to hear, and he came running, only to make my bio dad even angrier. He got really mad at my husband and said that he had manipulated me into pushing him out of my life and that he was bad for me. My husband got really angry, but he somehow composed himself, told my bio dad that we'll call the police if he tried to bother me again, and shut the door in his face. I'm exhausted. I'm just so glad that I'll be going away for my honeymoon and that I don't have to deal with him anymore, at least for a few days. I came back from my honeymoon, and you guys won't believe what my parents told me. So the morning after my bio dad had shown up at my place, my husband and I left for our honeymoon. We didn't tell my parents about what happened both because I didn't want them to worry and because I just didn't want to have a single conversation about them. Now I regret not saying anything because it would have served as a warning to my parents. Apparently, my bio parents showed up at my parents' house on the same day I had left for my honeymoon. This time, both of them were there, and apparently, my bio mom said some pretty nasty things to my parents about how they had stolen me because they had money to manipulate the system. They said a lot of awful things about my dad in particular. This makes me so sad and angry. I think I've had enough of them and their selfishness. My parents are the last people on earth who deserve such rude treatment. I've dropped a text to my bio mom saying that if they ever bother my family again, I'll sue them for harassment. I've also said that I don't want to see them ever again and that she shouldn't expect any financial help from me from this day onwards. I might be a bad person for doing this, but I don't care. NTA, wow, OP, I am truly sorry for everything you have been going through. Some people really should not have children in the first place. I cannot believe how entitled your bio parents are. Not only did they try to ruin your wedding, but threatened your parents. That's a different kind of love. I would suggest maybe getting a restraining order against them. That would teach them a lesson. I'm so glad your husband has your back whenever they try to create drama and make you sad. You're just lucky to have him. Much love to you and him. NTA, I think you guys should have called the cops on your bio parents a long time ago. Also, you should have never helped them financially because that probably just made them feel more entitled to you. When your bio dad showed up drunk at your place, that should have been your cue to take legal action against him and your bio mom so that they don't bother your family anymore. I feel truly sorry that they're a part of your life. But it's so nice that you have wonderful parents and a husband who seems to truly love you. I hope your bio parents never bother you again in the future. So, I'm going to try keep a really long story concise as best as I can. I, female 28, and my twin sister, V, female 28, were born to a teen mom who raised us the best she could, but led us both to have a very different ways of dealing with abandonment and unstable home life. My mom has a very strained relationship with V since when she was 17, she started doing many different substances, partying, alcohol, smoking. I, being her sister, always tried my best to support her as my mother did, but I was more of a best friend, whereas my mom was the one to force her to sort her life out, rehab, etc. I, on the other hand, turned out to be very obsessed with having control and structure in my life, which has made it very difficult for me to maintain romantic relationships, as I can be controlling and paranoid with abandonment. Cut forward to when I went to uni, V found herself in a very bad toxic relationship and practically cut off my mother, which severed their relationship entirely. She eventually got pregnant and gave birth to my nephew in my second year at uni. After struggling with romantic partners all my life and having very short-term boyfriends, I met my ex-fiancé, let's call him D, who I genuinely thought I'd met the one. During this time, V had broken up with her toxic ex and was now a single mom, so me and D would have her and my nephew over most weekends. I, however, fell pregnant, and a year after my daughter was born, Dee proposed. I had never been happier for starting my family. We decided to wait a year to get married and genuinely enjoyed our new family life. However, one weekend, I decided to go see my mother and spend the day with her and my daughter. But we came home early since my mother became busy. When I arrived home, I saw V's car outside, which wasn't unusual, and went inside. Nothing would have prepared me for what I would find. V and D were alone together in my bedroom on my bed. It seemed like the deed had already been done. I went straight to packing for me and my daughter and left. I gave Dee no chance for excuses and cut both of them out of my life entirely except for allowing Dee visitation to our daughter. Jump forward 3 years, I have barely spoken to V except for when she pops back up into my life to apologize or explain, but I don't care. There is no excuse she could give me. I am now engaged to my beautiful fiancé, Am, and he loves my daughter and me more than I could even imagine. Although my mother is now begging me to invite my sister to my wedding coming up in June, saying to put the past in the past, since my mother has been able to forgive her and mend their relationship, I refuse, which has caused tension. She's telling me this may be the only way to fix our bond and for my daughter to have her aunt and cousin back, but I still refuse. So AITA, I'm super overwhelmed by everyone and their support and responses. Thank you to everyone. First of all, I haven't spoken to my mom yet, and I'm going to see her tomorrow and intended to speak to her. But I'm also planning on reaching out to my sister myself and seeing her one-on-one maybe in the next week or so. To talk, not to invite her to my wedding, but simply to see what she has to say since we have not had a sit-down proper conversation in over 3 years. I just have not been up to talking with her. Now, my life is stable and I'm happy. I'm willing to hear her out, mainly for myself and closure, if not proper forgiveness, for my own health. At this moment, I have no intention of inviting her, only to put my own thoughts at rest. I will keep you all updated after I speak to Mom and V. Thank you. NTA at all. And not everything can be fixed. Your sister did the ultimate betrayal. You would not invite an ex-friend who did that to you to your wedding. Just because you share DNA with your sister doesn't change that. Your mother has a fantasy that all her kids will get along and will go back to the way it is. Your mother will never stop bothering you on that issue. I don't blame you. I would not invite her either if I were you. There is no excuse for what happened. Once again, not everything can be fixed. Instead of worrying about this, have a great time planning your wedding and getting married. NTA, your wedding is about you and your fiancé starting a new life together, and you should have the people you want there for it. It's not the only way to fix your relationship with your sister, and it's frankly kind of weird that your mom sees encroaching on such a big life event as the only way you all can make amends. My boyfriend and I moved in together about 3 months ago. Recently, we got a joint account for grocery shopping. The plan is that we both put in $210, so we have $420 for the entire month. This weekend, we are having a movie marathon at my brother and sister-in-law's, and I baked a cake, some buns, and bought some snacks. We were running low on some staple things such as eggs, milk, and flour, so I bought this as well. I also bought some spring rolls for an easy dinner, as well as a big bag of dates that will last forever and be used for lots of stuff. It all came to around $70. Today, while I was at my brother's, and my boyfriend hadn't arrived yet because he didn't feel like watching 4 movies in a row, my boyfriend wrote me a message with just my name, nothing else. He normally never uses my real name unless I've done something real bad. So my heart instantly started beating faster and I felt kind of sick. He then asked, "What have you spent $70 on?" And I explained that I had bought stuff for the weekend, as well as some staple stuff, my brother and sister-in-law providing food as well as snacks and soda. He was going on about it being a lot of money and that he didn't understand how I was even able to spend this much. I explained to him that the prices are crazy right now and that just the milk, eggs, flour, and butter had been $14. He then wrote that he felt I was being rude, flippant, not sure how to explain it in English, but in its essence, a kind of rude word that means that I'm not respecting him, which I did not feel applied to my behavior whatsoever. I honestly felt like it was the complete opposite. I am now left with an awful feeling. My parents have always had a dynamic where my dad got mad at my mom when she spent money. I don't want this dynamic in my relationship, and now I'm kind of afraid that we will end up like that. I realize that $70 is a lot of money, but that's honestly the times we are living in, at least where we live. Am I the a-hole for spending the money? I feel like I have to add that only about $30 was money spent on the weekend. The rest was for dinner and other necessities. It's a movie weekend that my boyfriend is also part of. I paid with our joint account as it was our share for the weekend. That dynamic is financial abuse. You put in more than you spent. You bought groceries, what the account is for, NTA, but you need to sit down with him and explain that next time he does anything like that. You stop contributing to the account because obviously he cannot be trusted to share finances. The time after that, relationship's over. Note, if you had spent like $300, gone out to dinner, or were using money that is entirely his, that would be totally different and he would have every right to be angry. NTA, and you should be concerned about his response to this situation. It's totally one thing for him to ask you about the money and voice his concerns about the cost. Entirely another thing to have made you feel like you did something wrong. Unless you had that money earmarked specifically, this seems like a normal expense to have made. Anger is not a healthy way to discuss issues, especially new issues that haven't happened before. I would take this as a red flag that he may not be the right person if you're trying to stay away from your parents' dynamic. NTA, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Your boyfriend is showing you some real troubling behavior. I really hope you also have a bank account and credit cards of your own. Do not let yourself get into a position of dependency on this man, and think hard about this relationship.